Can you see the cats in the background? I know, they're cute, but watch me. I want to say that if we were all in the same room when we do the Q&A for the Music Man, a fight could well break out over the fact that Broadway's 1958 Tony Award for Best Musical went not to West Side Story, but to the Music Man. But I wouldn't be part of that fight, because for me, they're both truly great pieces. How terrific that they got produced in the same season and that they're still going strong 64 years later. Next season, Hugh Jackman tackles Harold Hill on Broadway, and I, for one, can't wait. So even if you're a West Side Story zealot, here is my chance to give the Music Man equal time. First, some background on the Broadway production, which ran 1,375 performances and made the cover of Time magazine. Then the 1962 film version you're watching this week, probably for the 14th time. I think all of us have a story to tell about how we grew up, and when we get to the Q&A, Bob, Noel, and I are going to ask you about yours. But the Music Man, that is Exhibit A. Meredith Willson wrote the show's music and lyrics and script with Franklin Lacey as story editor. He was 55 when it opened, and by then he had done just about everything in the music world. The guy who wrote 76 Trombones was classically trained. This graduate of Juilliard played the piccolo in John Philip Sousa's band, and the flute for Toscanini's New York Philharmonic. He even wrote a couple of symphonies. But he was drawn to popular music as well, and he became a household name conducting and hosting a number of radio series in the late 1930s and 40s, one of them called How to Like Long Hair Music. Plus, he started writing songs. You and I and It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas. Those are just two of Meredith Willson's hits, but never a musical until 1949. That's when the drum roll began. At a New York party, he was telling stories about his boyhood in Mason City, Iowa, when his songwriting colleague Frank Lesser jumped to his feet, according to Willson, and said, "What an idea! Why don't you write a musical about it? You could tell everybody about your town. It would be real Americana." Which reminds me of something I was taught in creative writing class in college. Write about what you know about. Certainly Meredith Willson knew about small town life in Iowa in 1912. In fact, most of the characters in The Music Man are drawn from members of his family or the townspeople when he was 10 years old. He later said, "Innocent. That was the adjective for Iowa in those years. All I had to do was remember." He began by writing at the top of the page, Act 1, Scene 1. "The words commit you," he later observed. "So far, so good." It was the fifth word that was the stickler. Meredith Willson spent the next 8 years of his life remembering, as he wrote 40 drafts of his first musical, eventually coming up with a funny and affectionate satire on American small-town life. But this is more than just nostalgia. It's the story of two seemingly incompatible people, a librarian and a con man, who must learn they were meant for each other. When we listen to Willson describe his show, he sounds downright folksy.
Our story starts back in 1912 in a little Iowa town called River City, when a fellow named Harold Hill, Professor Harold Hill, if you don't mind, bounces into town on the morning of the 4th of July. Now, Professor Hill comes to the town for the purpose of selling band instruments to the kids. Also uniforms, also instruction books, also lessons, promising at the end of the summer to form a band. And does he cut him a swath? Why, you'd never dream that this fellow doesn't know one note from another?
But underneath his gee whiz persona beat the heart of a sophisticated artist who became obsessed with experimenting. He wanted to make musical theater songs more conversational. As he said, people don't talk in rhymes, so I decided to write rhythmic, rhymeless, speak song. We hear it in the jaw-dropping opening number when a train car full of traveling salesmen complain about their nemesis, Professor Harold Hill, not knowing he's on the same train. Stephen Sondheim points out this was the very first rap to be heard on Broadway. Here is Wilson again. As he said, when you're on a train, you talk like a train.
You can talk, you can talk, you can bicker, you can talk, talk, bicker, bicker, you can talk all you want, but it's different than it was. No, it ain't, but you gotta know the territory.
And we hear the same technique used in varying tempos in You Got Trouble, Piano Lesson, the intro to 76 Trombones, and the rhymeless interlude to the gorgeous My White Knight, a song replaced by Being in Love in the film. As for casting the leads, Marion Peru was easy. The 30-year-old Barbara Cook was the creative team's unanimous choice. I'm not old enough to have seen her on Broadway, but you can hear Barbara Cook on the cast album, and she is luminous. Today, of course, we can scarcely imagine anyone but Robert Preston playing the Music Man. Good luck, Hugh Jackman. But everyone and his brother was considered for the role, and most of them turned it down, including Danny Kaye, Ray Bolger, Gene Kelly, and Dan Daly. When Wilson and his collaborators finally decided they wanted an actor and not a song and dance man, the 39-year-old Robert Preston's name shot to the top of the list, even though he had no experience in musical theater whatsoever. Preston later recalled, "They gave me trouble to audition with, and what I did for that audition didn't change a lot right up to the performance. It all started to work from the first day, and we all knew it. But we did have an understanding. If after 2 weeks of rehearsal it looked as though it wasn't going to work, we would part company and no one would be upset." If it all sounds magical, it wasn't. Hence Meredith Willson's 40 drafts. Only one record label, Capitol, was interested in recording the show. Kermit Bloomgarden, who produced it on Broadway, was warned by some of his investors, "Don't do it, it's corny." Needless to say, they did not invest. There were snobby audience members who shared that judgment, but over the years, most of the rest of us have taken Wilson's characters to our heart. And a reminder that despite the sunny portrait of small-town life in 1912, there are some dark corners in this story. 3 of the characters have to deal with small-town, small-mindedness. They just don't fit into the demand for conformity. Marion's younger brother Winthrop is mocked for his lisp, clearly a result of the pain he still feels from his father's death. Marion, who's also the town's piano teacher, is shunned by the women of River City. They don't understand her aloofness, so they make up a scandal. And talk about a lily-white community. Here it is. That was true of life in 1912 Iowa, of course, but if any people of color had tried to move in, they would have been pushed out. We get a sense of that in the so-called wild kid Tommy Gillis, actually a good kid, who only rebels because he's not accepted. He's Lithuanian, a word that the mayor, in his ignorance, can't even pronounce. Immigrants are not welcome here in River City. This musical is so masterfully written that we may scratch our heads wondering why none of Meredith Willson's later musicals, and there were 3, came close to matching the success of The Music Man? But the answer, I think, is probably simple. This was the story he had to tell. There are many layers to it, including a theme that runs through lots of great literature. Harold and Marion transform each other. How they get there is truthful and moving, and how wonderful and unusual it is that the 1962 film is so loyal to the stage musical. Reprising their Broadway roles, in addition to Robert Preston, are Pert Kelton as Widow Peru, Paul Ford as Mayor Shin, and the great American barbershop quartet, the Buffalo Bills, as the squabbling members of the school board who find harmony in music. And choreographer Anna White and Broadway director Morton DaCosta return to the show as well. White's Dance in the Library, that's one of the classic moments in 1950s musical theater choreography. Among the principals in 1962, three of the newcomers are Hermione Gingold as the insufferable Eulalie McKechnie Shin, Buddy Hackett as the professor's sidekick, and 8-year-old Ronnie, later Ron Howard as Winthrop. And of course, 28-year-old Shirley Jones as Marion. Years later,
of course, everybody wants the soundtrack to be perfect. It's not like on Broadway, where if you goof one night, there's always tomorrow's performance. In films, you try to get one perfect performance, and that means with some 200 musicians and singers. So there's a lot of room for error. I'm pretty sure The Music Man must hold some kind of record in Hollywood for being the biggest recording ever made for a film. You can feel pretty small sometimes, just one soprano against all those big horns.
As I mentioned, Meredith Willson said that the key word to describe his hometown in 1912 was innocent. Well, maybe that word could also be applied, at least in part, to America in 1963. Here he is with Gary Moore and the panelists on I've Got a Secret.
Let's have Meredith reveal this song as formed by the names of these folks. Are you ready to start right now?
Yes, I'm very ready. I need two more people, though.
Oh, two more people.
The two more people come out, if you please.
I see.
That's right. These people, Gary, constitute the introduction.
The introduction. Sir,
Yes.
what is your name, please?
Al Umpa.
Al Umpa. And your name, please?
Charlotte Parr.
Yes.
Charlotte Parr.
I'll show you how that goes. Umpa. 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 You got the feeling.
That's good. All right.
How is it again?
In the good old
Summertime.
Now, of course, we repeat that.
Yes.
in the good old
Summertime.
I think he has a future in the singing. Rolling. Now, we couldn't find any down, so we got to go back to Inda.
in the
Shady.
lane.
That's it. You ready for the next one, Gary?
Oh, yes.
You're going to love this.
Which
Baby.
mine
Which is baby mine?
You hold her.
Hugh Holder.
and blank.
Yes, now we couldn't find an and, so we put a blank in there. That's Miss Blank.
Miss Blank. All right.
There wasn't any she, so we did our best with that.
That means she.
Yeah. Hold, and we couldn't find a plural name, so we got two people.
Those
Brother and
both named
sister.
Holds.
The Holds. Yours. Sam Dad. What is that? Sam Dad.
Sam Dat?
Yes, first name is Sam.
Sam Dat.
Sam Dad. A very good. Oh, wait a minute. Good. Fine. Yes. Four.
Your
Hold it up, Florence. That's it.
Hey, sure.
Your Tuesday. Woozy. That's it.
As for the Broadway wise guys who dismissed The Music Man on Broadway in 1957, my friend Bruce Pomahak, who was music director for many years of the Rodgers and Hammerstein organization, once told me something about Oscar Hammerstein's writing that applies to Meredith Willson. He said, "It's about how we have to learn to love each other, no matter how hard that is." And people say, "How can we love each other? That's corny." Yes, and life is corny. Being born is corny. Growing up is corny. And having kids, it's all corny. And I say, The Music Man is a musical comedy slice of life. So, embrace the corniness. I'm Bill Rudman from the Musical Theater Project.